Having just built a studio and for the first time in 13 years being able to take stock of my work and re-examine what I've been able to keep hold of, it's perhaps time to piece the story of vision space together in terms of the principal form of inquiry, intuitive record. My father taught me the fundamentals of perspective at around 7. Working through school and from life study, there were clearly major issues with the geometry of perspective and what we record as perceived experience. Not just a few minor things, really fundamental things. For more information on the slides just seen, see the other vision space presentations. I want to concentrate on development through the artwork here. I find looking at trees totally fascinating. Just how do we generate the awareness of looking up into branches, to feel the space? It takes my breath away. It's mind-blowingly beautiful. However, when I approached rendering this experience with the tool sets I've been introduced to, nothing got close. Western art simply didn't depict the sense of spatial awareness into which I felt connected. This wasn't an ability, concentration, or level of detail issue. There was a very significant dark something missing, and I was simply not equipped to approach it. On looking back through my renditions of trees, I was amazed to find this drawing. I'd obviously dropped the entire toolset and started again. This is essentially a depth map set out on planes from a central plane set on the tree trunk. I was not far off, a critical element of the deficit even then. The underlying structure behind the dark dataset in Vision is based around a radial depth map, with a fixation at the setting out point. It extends in a field structure in all directions from the fixation. It's spherical. In this example from our post-production tool, the fixation is on the serial packet. Take a step back. If there was something fundamentally amiss between central perspective and perceived reality, a good place to start establishing the differential would be with perspective itself. The perspectivists have to agree that if we see in perspective, then we don't see spheres as spherical. We must be seeing elliptical shapes instead. Why should the sphere actually be any different from any other perceived object? Why should we see a box shape differently to a sphere? Or is the geometry of perspective not fundamental to vision? Can we start to think about the geometry in an entirely different way? A sphere of a certain diameter fits into a box with sides equal to the sphere's diameter. It's possible to draw the box without perspective in many ways. Here are 2 of them. A box in basic isometric projection and a box seen in terms of 3 vertical planes, front, middle and back. Taken together, they represent a system constructed from a duality. Somehow this system looked to have some authenticity to it. Between all the data available on the page, my mind was making sense of it as an object in a box. What would happen if this combined system moved? If the previous slide was the space the object occupied, what about the space around it? I was at the Slade School of Fine Art by this time, and they were not impressed. However, I set about a project. I wanted to make an artwork that had nothing to do with Western art. No oil paint, canvas, frames, picture planes, picture composition, perspective cues, and not something just to be hung on the wall. This work should be useful. I had to make a clean break, get into a different mindset. Fortunately, an exhibition of ancient Japanese screens was in London. I resolved to make a folding screen and work on that using inks, pens and parchment-like paper. The task was to establish the relationships that must exist between the 2 spaces. There must be a relationship as I felt the presence of the sphere in that damn box. There had to be a mathematical and geometric relationship. I should be able to visualize this relationship and then make progress. Starting close to the top left, I played with the possible rendering options to make sense of the whole. You'll notice 2/3 of the way down, the trajectory activity stops. I couldn't do it. I stopped and thought about it hard. Was this setup standing in for something very fundamental? Was this a perceptual issue dependent on light and nothing to do with geometry at all? Had the exercise unwittingly taken on a greater significance? If there is a fundamental duality at work within visual perception, linked to light, then the relationship would be a profound one. I told myself to just accept the physical duality and see where that led. The sense of whole from the duality would have to be a matter of neuroscience and psychology. In accepting the duality, I also knew there were fundamental implications for physics. independent realities for wave and particle expressions. They would not be complementary. All the wheels fall off. Everything disintegrates in front of you. There is nothing left to stand on. Relativity fails. Einstein was attempting to do what I had been doing on the top 2/3 of the line, demanding objectivity. Relativity was a patch, a good one, but it was only mathematics masking a deeper reality. After the Slade, a few years passed as I reconfigured everything. I was starting to lead multiple lives to provide the cover for the activity, hoping that it would all come together, but knowing that I couldn't drop anything. It was everything or nothing. My artwork became illustrative of the process, as I was unable to bring the issues together to act upon anything directly. The theorizing eventually evolved into the extended paper Having the Courage of Your Perceptions. It was unstable and fragile at this stage, but suggested that I should look very carefully at my own sense of vision again, also at the work of past masters working from still life, and then see what was happening in the visual neurosciences. The science connections are actually covered in other presentations, but the theory afforded me some steerage. I should be able to detect two independent data potentials operational in my sense of vision, that not be seamlessly integrated into one another and display very different characteristics, perception of motion, etc. The issue was going to be how to isolate them, address them, become more aware of each as independent players in order to observe their characteristics and how they interacted. I developed some eye exercises involving opening and shutting one eye and then the other in rapid succession, and accounting from what was in front of me at any one point in time in relation to what came before and after. It sounds simple, it isn't. There are a million things to account for and discount. The exercises have to be repeated over and over again. Doubt has to be dispelled every morning. From this I was able to start to distinguish some of the differentials, and then to create stimuli that contained both sets of references to see how they played out. The sophistication with respect to the mediation of the two principal datasets developed to a point where I could make associations with other artists, like Cézanne, Van Gogh, Degas, Chardin, Turner and Bonnat, amongst others. They were seeing the same things. I could now set up situations to test the understanding and deepen it. I was in some sort of control now. I scanned old photographs and re-engineered fixations. I took new photographs and started to understand how to engineer multiple fixation points. I took sequences of photographs and re-engineered them. I tried to understand how to think about vision space with respect to picture space. I tried to build that understanding into an overarching theory. There is a requirement for an implicit understanding of space and an explicit understanding of objective form. We require both to be truly objective. This is how we are factored into our visual encounters with our environment and also potentially how we are factored into the universe. Our current instrumentation will not do this for us. I was also able to work out how we make use of binocular disparity within the phenomenon of vision. We do not fuse binocular pairs. The structure of phenomenal field, together with the dynamic of information exchange, indicate how we should go about being objective at all scales. This is why the screen appears in the first combined paintings of phenomenal field. There are very significant implications for future technologies here. That is all dealt with in other presentations and on the PAC website. Vision is truly a relationship we form with the real, an entanglement that beds us in the universe in multiple ways.